Hi, everybody. Welcome to the EladPod. We've got a special tonight with comedian, author, and he does just about everything, Josh Gondelman. So thanks for showing up and watching. If you're not out there protesting, good to watch this instead. If you are out there protesting, good. Happy that you did that, and you can watch this later. If you are there and you're watching right now, let us know. Go ahead and put it in the comments. So just say, hey, I'm here, and I'm from wherever I'm from. I'm from St. Louis right now, although I've been running around quite a bit today. So just let us know where you are. If you can, share this video. So if you're on Facebook, if you're on Twitter, you can retweet it. YouTube, share the link. If you're on the website, share that too. Let folks know so that we can have more folks watching. We can have a bigger, better conversation. We've got some questions already, but we need more. So please go ahead and submit those. And let us know where you're at, and we will be on in just a bit. So while you're waiting, go ahead and share, and we'll be on in just a minute. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming to the EladPod. We've got Josh Gondelman here today. Again, if you're just joining us, please let us know in the comments who you are and where you're from. It's always fun. Sydney, thank you for watching from O'Fallon. Appreciate it. Not too far away from where I am right now. A little bit farther from where Josh is. So if you are watching, go ahead and share so we can get a whole lot more watching. But let me bring in our guest of the day. Josh, are you there? Can you hear me?
I am. Hello.
Great. We've got you on. I'm so happy you are here. Where are you at right now?
I'm at home in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. Okay. So, yeah, a little bit farther from O'Fallon than I am right now.
Correct.
A
I
lot of
think.
folks
Unless
from Missouri,
O'Fallon
so.
is like Westchester County.
Yeah, it's a little bit, but well, I'm really excited that you could come on. You've known my wife for quite some time, and she
A long
is,
time.
yeah, terrified of being on the live stream. But since she's not here, and I can ask any question I want, how did you meet my wife? How do you know her?
We have a mutual friend.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. And so, and when we were all living in the Boston area, a friend of mine introduced us.
Yeah, you were not
Yeah.
there at the infamous Boston fight with the guy with the bow and arrow.
I was not.
Okay,
I've never fought a guy with a bow and arrow.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I'll
So
bring
I
her
would
down, and
remember.
we'll do an after show, and I'll bring her down to tell the story because only she
Mhm.
can tell that story. So, well, that's great. So you are a what do you call yourself? I mean, I would say you're a comedian. You're an author. What do you call yourself?
Yeah, I'd say writer and comedian.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's good. I mean, you just I guess you just published a book right at the end of 2019, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
I did. It's a book of personal essays called
That's
Nice Try, Stories of best intentions and mixed results.
Why did you write this book?
I I felt like I had some stories to tell,
Uh-huh.
and I wanted to work on a project I'd been writing for Last Week Tonight with John Oliver for several years. And I thought, in addition to doing this, it would be really nice to have a project that was my own again, a big thing that I could work on. And so I wrote this book, and it came out last fall, and I was really excited. I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, that's really so. I do a little bit of writing, not like that. Now almost all of it is political and position papers for the most part. If it's not a legal brief or something, which is not the most fun thing to write in the world. But I used to have different teachers with different tips about writing and how to get into it. Now that you have this book, you have put all of your thoughts down. I'm sure you've got plenty more. What
And
has you're done. It's empty.
I'm
This is it.
tapped.
Get the
It's
book, folks,
over.
because there's no more coming. That's the end of it. What has been a tip that you've received that has been positive or maybe negative for you, and what is one that now, having done this, you would give to somebody who's thinking about writing?
Writing anything?
Yeah, sure, writing anything, right? I mean, with something that's I guess longer form, because folks can sit down, they can type for a little bit, but then after that, there's a certain threshold you have to get past in order to get to book level. So, what would be your
So,
advice?
something that I've heard a bunch is like write things you'd want to read,
Mm-hmm.
and I like that. That's like pretty simple. And helpful, because I think there's like a lot of what should I write or blah blah blah. But I think if you feel it's when you write a book, it's not just the getting the words of the book out onto the page, right? Like then it's editing the whole thing with input from an editor, and then ideally there's if it sells and is going out into the world, then there's that kind of period waiting for it to be out and the marketing. And so there's so much that's part of a book that takes longer than just the time it takes to like sit down and churn out whatever 60,000, 70,000 words. And so it should be something you're really excited to sit with.
Mm-hmm.
That's my advice,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise you'll get like a year into this 2 year plus process and go, oh well, I hate this already.
I'm not doing it. I think that's a really good. It's a really good piece of advice for communication, I think, in general, because I have found that I do a lot of the communication, all of it. I basically do all of the communications for the campaign right now, and I've been talking a lot
Hmm.
politically before. But I think it's interesting, and folks are really, they seem to respond pretty well, because it's very much like what I would like to talk about, what I would like to hear, what I would like to see somebody do. And I think it gives you, because that, right? That's your passion, that's your interest, and when you put that out, folks can see that pretty readily. Um, I mean, I guess
Yeah.
you see the same thing as like, you've done stand up before. I'm sure you see the same thing when you're performing that way too.
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of stand up, and I think I always have more, I always have a better time of it, both in terms of audience response and my own satisfaction, when I'm thinking about like, I really want to talk about this tonight, as opposed to like, oh, I guess people want to hear about this. Because that's like, I think it, I think this is something I picked up from something maybe comedian and actor and writer Mike Birbiglia said, but like um, that it's like you do the thing you're going to do, right? You write it the way you want to write it, and then you hear if the audience responds, and then it's a negotiation of if
Mm-hmm.
they are not into it the way you want them to be into it, then how do you bring them in, or how do you come to them? And I think that's the best starting place, is like, here's what I'd like to do, here's what I want to communicate, and how I'd like to say it. And if you're not understanding me, then I'll try a different tack.
Yeah. 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 So we're going to talk a bit today about what, and maybe it'd be funny if this is something you don't want to talk about. Too bad. But it's comedy and the role it really has in moments like where we are right now and change. And I think it's really interesting, given your background working on John Oliver's show, for example, which
Mhm.
I think a lot of folks watch, and there's just really good. it's so interesting how much journalism. You look back at the Daily Show where a lot of these guys came from, but looking at how we got such strong journalism from the world of satire and comedy. Just thinking about the topic, do you agree? Do you think that it does have a pretty important role to play? Do you think that role is oversized, undersized? Like where are we right now in your view, having worked on a lot of these types of projects?
I mean, I think like the role of journalism, the role of journalism belongs to journalism, but I do think like any art, right? Comedy can reflect a vision of the world as you'd like to see it, or can discuss the kinds of things that are um, problems with the world in ways maybe people hadn't considered before. But I don't think I think it's much closer and is an art rather than like a public information vector necessarily. And that's I mean that with admiration. Like I think it's closer to reading a novel that changes the way you think, or like a song with themes that illuminate some facet of life that you haven't considered before, more than it is an act of journalism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of reflective of where we are, where folks, it's just there's so many different things out there, right? There's the internet, there's YouTube, there's Twitter, heck, we're streaming on like 4 or 5 different things right now,
Mm-hmm.
and there's all, and then people are also tired because there's work and there's lots of work and there's stress out there, and heck, now especially, what the heck is going on out there in the world? And it seems like, sometimes, I don't know, sometimes it seems like you need that I guess that art, the way that you describe it, but that art to engage folks in how you're communicating, and I think that's why there is a big draw right now to the more entertaining versions of the media and the news. And I think that's true about cable news too right now in terms of viewership and everything else. But it's almost become like more entertainment driven, which I think is sad in a lot of ways, but it seems like that's kind of where we are right now. So, how did you get into comedy? Why are you doing comedy?
Well, at this point, I've exhausted all my other options and burned all my other bridges. It's over for me. If this doesn't stick, I'm done.
Yeah.
I've got to, I don't know. I guess I've got to learn a new trade, sell body parts for science, which they're not supposed to buy them, I don't think,
They're
while you're
not.
alive.
No, they're not supposed
Yeah,
to.
they're not supposed to do that. But I started stand up between freshman and sophomore year in college, but I was already writing. I was at Brandeis. I was going to be a fiction major. I was doing improv, and I'd always wanted to do comedy. And then between my freshman and sophomore year, a guy that I knew from home started doing stand up, and all our mutual friends bullied me into also doing it. They're like, if Joe can do it, why can't you do it? You should do it because he's doing it. And so it was like that. And then I started, and within about a year, he had kind of like, he's so funny. He's one of the funniest dudes that I know. But he just decided the like lifestyle of out every night, kind of networking, it wasn't for him. He just wanted to get to show up and be funny. And there's just like so many other elements to that.
Yeah. So basically, your friends dared you into doing comedy.
Correct.
Good dare. So wait, now that you're like doing, okay, so of the friends that dared you into doing this, what are they? Are any of them doing comedy right now?
No, none of them ever were.
Okay, so now does that mean that you, like, in the future now, do you hold something that you can then, like, oh, you all now need to do this? Is there like a dare that you can now reciprocate to them?
I don't think so.
It sounds like you've earned it.
I feel like this worked out well enough that I don't need to like claim retribution. That's where I am.
Well,
I think like
maybe it's less retribution. Look, like it worked out really well for you.
Sure.
So
I'm
maybe
doing
it's
okay.
really you opening a door for them.
Yes, I feel like if that were in play, I would want to do that for my friends. But I don't think I'm not like sitting on a dare like we're going to be at a zoo outside a tiger cage and I'm like, "You know how you told me I had to do comedy? You have to put your head in that tiger's mouth."
I mean, there's still the circus out there, so
There is. I think they're mostly non-animal
they are.
circuses though.
They are. Yeah.
They've taken the animals out of it.
There's been a lot of changes to the circus in America. So
I haven't been in so long. If
I
you
have
were to ask me to describe what goes on at a circus, it would be mostly conjecture. I'd start with very small car full of numerous people, and then it's a real roll of the dice.
there is, I was about to say, yeah, me neither, but that would be a lie. There is a group called Circus Harmony in Missouri, actually in the St. Louis area. And oh man, they do a lot of work with kids, and they teach kids, a lot of gymnastics and all this performing, and they
That's
go
cool.
around. Super cool. And they've actually gone to like different like spaces where there are conflicts and had kids from those factions or whatever come together and actually do these things together and see what everybody's doing and learn from it. It's a really really cool program. It's a nonprofit. If you all are watching and don't know Circus Harmony, go check them out. They do a great job. And yeah.
That's so cool. I expected it truly when you said Circus Harmony. I was like clowns that do a cappella. That's 100% what it is. That was my guess. I would have staked my life on it.
Yeah, not sure they have the trademark, but they should. And I'm a lawyer, so I can help you out with that. But yeah, I don't know if I've seen any great performing. The performances are great. I just don't know if I've seen much a cappella at their performance.
That's all right.
I mean, I'll let them know next time I see them. So,
They're
okay.
usually on the
So
table.
you're in comedy. You're doing comedy. How does that go? I know a lot of folks. They start there. They talk about how tough it is, and finding gigs and all this other stuff, and like ones that actually pay that you make a living. So, what was your path? How did you get to where you are now?
It was, yeah, it was a long time before it was my full-time job. I did stand up in and around Boston, but around when I was in college and between years of school, and then I stayed and taught pre-K for 4 years, and then did stand up in the evenings because they don't really do night school for preschool, so I was free and clear. And then after about 7 years doing it in the Boston area, I moved to New York City, and I had won this comedy competition in Atlanta that let me go out on the road a little bit more, make a little more money. But when I moved to New York, I stopped teaching full time and just kept my part-time tutoring gig. And then I did that for a number of years while I was like waiting to get my first writing gig. And I got, I was doing little freelance writing pieces here and there. I was going on the road doing stand up. I was tutoring. And then finally I got hired to do the social media and digital writing for Last Week Tonight for its first season. And I took that job, and that was finally, I left my tutoring position. That was after, 2.5 years in New York, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That part feels longer. Like if you were to be like, how long were you in New York just with nothing going? I would have been like 5 years, but it was not that. It just, they take on outsized importance. But yeah, I moved to New York in 2011, and then in early 2014 I got that gig. So yeah, like just over 2.5 years.
Yeah. So you said you were doing pre-K.
Yes.
Okay, because I knew you had been teaching before. Yeah. So I've got a nonprofit I've run for 13 years teaching kids, and my first class I taught was kindergartners going into first grade because we focus so much on summer. So it's always like transitioning from one to the other. Pre-K is very important because if they come to kindergarten without pre-K, that often means they don't know all of their colors and the shapes and the letters of the alphabet, or struggle too. Pre-K is super important. So thank you for doing that. I hope they learned something with you.
I hope so too. Nobody hopes that.
Any of your pre-K kids followed up with you? Have they been like, "Oh, hey, I was in your pre-K class and now you're famous"?
None of them are quite old enough yet, and I don't know that they'd remember. But I am in touch with some of the parents, like through Facebook, which is really
cool.
cute. Yeah, because it's been a while since I've been teaching, but like I guess the oldest kids are like a, maybe high school juniors now,
Yeah.
which is pretty wild.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Actually, you know what? A couple of them did follow up. A few months ago, one of them found me on Instagram.
That's where they all are. They're all on
Yeah.
Instagram and TikTok.
It was very precious.
Yeah.
I had to be like, so nice to hear from you. Thank you. And then kind of quietly just be like, but we can't be friends. You're 16. So, but I was like, very sweet that you reached out.
Very nice. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. Give him a few more years so that he could talk. Yeah, Instagram is it's an interesting place. So you're on Instagram, huh?
Oh yeah.
What's your handle? Get it out there.
At Josh Gondelman.
Oh, that's
Pretty
really hard to
simple.
remember.
Gondelman. It is kind of hard because there's not a lot of Gondelmans out there, so it's not the most common name. Like you could say it and it doesn't mean anything to people.
Right.
Most people.
Right. I mean, but what's nice about that is that if somebody Googles your name and misspells it, as they probably often do, they're probably going to get to you.
They will.
Yeah.
The most common misspelling is Gondleman,
Right.
which is that's nobody.
No.
So it just comes right to me. And then I have this. I've been recording a podcast, and we have a transcription service that helps with the edit. So, or not an app, a transcription app, and then you read the transcript as you listen to the thing that you're editing, and you can make notes in it. And that lists me as Josh Gwendolyn.
Yeah, they have tough times with my name too. First name,
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, first name's tough. Autocorrect, man, it just turns it into, it's like, oh, you must have meant lead,
Yeah.
Lead, right? Yeah, it's like, duh. I mean, you just made a spelling mistake.
No, it's a lot of. Do you have a lot of like, my son is also named Bort moments in your life?
It's a little, there it was. So what's bad? It's good and it's bad. So my first name backwards is Dale.
Right.
And people, like, when they hear it, like, oh. And so then some people start calling me Dale. But now I start, well, before the virus, there's a guy I was playing rugby with, and his name is Dale. So it gets really confusing for me because Dale is actually like, get the ball to Dale. And I'm like, I'm not ready for this. But that's
a different guy.
Yeah, different guy. So that's been tougher, actually. There was a friend of mine was at the grocery store, Target or something. I don't know, something. And heard a mom yelling, Elad, don't cause, I don't know, we can't afford that, or we can't take that something. And then he was like, what is he doing? So he goes into the different aisle, and he sees a little kid trying to grab like some Pez dispenser or something. So there's another one of me now in the area. This is unprecedented.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, oh, maybe this will get people a little more acclimated, or are you like, there can be only one?
I am a big fan of the Highlander, and it pains me to say for this poor kid, but no, it's okay. It's okay. Although I will say on the campaign, it's been really helpful, because I remember I was sitting at a restaurant, like a little kind of coffee shop thing in Warrensburg, Missouri, which is not quite all the way to Kansas City from here, but it's on the way. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Central Missouri, everything else is there. And I'm sitting there, and I was there for like an hour and a half till my computer died, and I had to go to another meeting. And I give over my credit card, and the lady looks at it and sees my name and says, hey, aren't you running for something? And I was like, how did you see my name somewhere? She's like, well, I mean, there aren't too many Elads out there. I'm like, no, there aren't. So a lot of people think it's a company. It's like this thing. Some people think that this thing looks like it's a company logo. It's like, yeah. What does that do?
Construction firm.
Mm-hmm. There was when I first started on Facebook, I had like a little, I found like an image on Google. It was a Turkish company, and it was ELAD as an acronym, and I don't know what it was, but it was just, their logo
funny.
Was a smiley face that you got from like, I don't know, Smart Art or something in PowerPoint, and it had a little like fez on top.
Huh.
Yeah. So I really should follow up with them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. See if they want to sponsor or something.
A whole new path. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. No foreign donations and campaigns, everybody. In case you're watching and you're trying to take tips, don't do it. Yeah, I should really consider. Okay, so right now you are you're writing. I mean, you're writing from where you live, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how is that? I mean, do you? Well, let me ask. I mean, is that normal for you? Are you normally do you normally write from home, or do you normally look for a different location to go to get your
Well,
focus going?
so I'm currently working on Desus and Mero for Showtime,
Right.
and we're off this month. But for the previous couple months, for April, May, we were writing from home fully, which is not usual. Normally, we have an office and we shoot our shows in a studio, and we have pretty regular office hours, even though it's a comedy writing job. And this has been really different, and it's like a major credit to everyone who works on the show how seamless the transition was, and I think how good the shows are being. Like everyone across the board at the show, from the post production department that like makes it so there's something to put on the air, all the way to the hosts, and like everybody in between, the writers, the graphics department. It's been a really incredible group that's done such a great job making the show as good as it can possibly be, I think, from home. But it is a lot different, yeah.
What are you like? Is the writer's room now like a Zoom chat room or something?
Yeah, and there's like it's a little more like solo parallel work in Google Docs,
Uh,
a little less like meeting and riffing with everybody, and then yeah, a more Zoom meetings. I'm sorry, there's like helicopters all over the place. If that is bleeding into the audio at all,
no, can't even hear it. Can't
great.
even hear it. Yeah, no.
But yeah, it's so everything is Zoom and Google Docs and all that.
Yeah. And is it better?
I don't think it's better.
It's always like I don't know.
I think there are I like not commuting.
Uh-huh.
I think it's possible to work from home. Like I think it is nice to have the flexibility, but ideally, I think we would be in a room together a little more. And definitely, the hosts of the show. I mean, they're literally in two different U.S. states. One lives
Mm.
just over the river in Jersey. I guess I don't know, just over the river, but in Jersey, and the other one lives in New York City. And so their chemistry is amazing over like Zoom calls, but there's just like the physicality of the show, I think, is more fun and dynamic when they're next to each other in chairs on the set.
Yeah, I agree. They're a fun bunch. How did you get on that? Like how did that become how did you start working for it?
The, I got asked to interview while I was still working at Last Week Tonight, and it was the season was kind of winding down, and I thought, I really like my job and I'm really glad to be there, but I don't know. Uh, I guess I had to think of like, is this the place that I want to be forever? Do I want to do this specific job forever? And I was like, I really love it, but I've been here for 5 years, and I'm willing to entertain the idea of like the next dream job if that comes along. And so when I went in for this because I think Desus and Mero are so funny, and I was very flattered to be asked, and I was going in for a little promotion. So I thought, all the things that I would want in a new gig, this gig would have. And so that made the decision to interview pretty easy. And then when I got the job, I waited pretty heavily because I'd had such a great experience at Last Week Tonight. But then this has been wonderful.
Yeah.
Truly, I say it all the time, but it's like going from a dream job to another dream job.
That's great. I mean, it's great when that happens.
Mhm.
That's awesome. Yeah, they seem like a pretty fun bunch. If you haven't watched Desus and Mero, pretty good. They're on Showtime, right? That's right.
Showtime.
Yeah, that's what I
Mhm.
thought. Yeah,
There's a lot on YouTube though. If
there
you
is.
haven't seen it and don't have Showtime, but check it out.
Yeah. The Hot Ones interview that they did, really.
Yeah, they were great.
I'm a big fan of Hot Ones. Spoiler alert: we might have a homemade one that we put out pretty soon. So, let's see. We've got some questions coming in and some good comments. All right, Jason's watching. Hey, Jason, how are you doing, bud? Laura, I'm gonna put her on screen because this is really sweet. Laura says, my favorite Gun Sense candidate and my favorite comedian all in one place. I guess that makes me the comedian. You're a Gun Sense candidate? I didn't even know.
I'm all senses.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Gun sense, sixth sense, any of the senses. I'm
Oh,
very tactile.
That's having Gun Sense and the Sixth Sense. That's probably too morbid for me. I don't think I can.
All right.
I can go with that one. That's good. Here we go. All right, it's about time. Any ideas why comedy is not funny anymore?
Oh, an interesting question.
Hmm.
And I think a little bit of a trick. But what I will say is, I think there's lots of different comedy that appeals to all different sensibilities.
Hmm.
And if you're not liking what you're seeing, I'm fairly sure that there's something out there for you. It's just about there's so much that it's hard to find what would suit your sensibility sometimes because it's kind of we're saturated with entertainment options. So I think I would argue that comedy is funnier maybe than ever, but it is harder if you're not finding what you want. It's harder to like navigate the
Yeah.
things that are not necessarily your cup of tea.
Who do you like in the game right now?
Oh my gosh, there's so many people.
Hmm.
This is like a question that I always uh, dread
Yeah.
because there are so
We
many.
just talked about Highlander rules too.
Right, there could be
So
only
yeah.
one. I mean, I think like John Mulaney,
Mhm.
Nate Bargatze, Gary Gulman are some of my favorites. I think Aparna Nancherla and Joe Firestone and Maeve Higgins, who run the show Butterboy in Brooklyn every Monday night, are all like incredible. Julio Torres' HBO special that came out last year called My Favorite Shapes is like incredibly funny and incredibly original. Um, Gosh, who else? Roy Wood Jr.,
Uh,
Maria Bamford. There's so many amazing working comedians right now, and that's like a fairly broad spectrum of just like comedic style. I think like you're gonna get a very different vibe from all those different comedians,
mhm.
and so they might not all be for everyone, but I think like everyone should find one person, whether it's like Nate, who's really like squeaky clean, or Aparna, who talks like really hilariously about, or Mary Bamford, either of them who talk very hilariously about like anxiety and mental health. And like there's such a broad spectrum of people working and the styles they're working in. And I think it's really special and like an exciting time.
Yeah. I think uh, some folks too. I think it's very easy to get sucked into everything that's happening, right? Especially news cycle wise.
Mhm.
Um, it seems it. I don't know. It seems like just given, and maybe it's the we talked about communication obviously earlier at the beginning of all of this, but maybe that's part of it where it's almost designed to suck you in to it, and oftentimes without it almost seems like for some folks stopping and watching a stand up or stopping and watching even like a cartoon or something, I don't know, something funny almost seems like for people a luxury that they shouldn't be taking, which is interesting. It's kind of like almost like the folks who are, hey, I can only read nonfiction because we have so many things we have to work on, without taking that break to read fiction. And it seems like the more that we push in that direction, there's a lot of pressure to even do that. But the more it seems like we push in that direction, the creativity for what we actually do in the real world that does have an impact seems to kind of be missing in a lot of ways.
Huh. That's interesting. I think there are moments where it feels more urgent that more of our time is used for like serious and vital pursuits, and I think maybe we are in such a moment. And I appreciate that. I think that's really important. I think like to fully disengage, right? That to me is a problem. To go like I can't read the news, any of it. I
Right.
can't engage with the reality of what's happening in a way that is helpful and productive. That to me is that's like maybe a tough way to be because there are so many people who really need everyone to show up.
Hmm.
Like who need the most possible people to show up and advocate and be allies. But I also think that like there are there's only so much most people can withstand
Yeah.
per day, and it's okay to um, take care of your own mind and body for a little while a day if you need to, right? Like if you have to work and then you are reading the news, so you catch up and you march at a demonstration or a protest, or you are looking for a place to responsibly donate money. I think that's all really, really important. But I think it's also okay to take 30 minutes and, watch a Seinfeld rerun or whatever it is that you need to do to make your life to like soothe your own brain a little bit.
Yeah, I think the breaks are important. You gotta have them. Maybe not all of them.
No,
So,
I don't think you need all the breaks, but I think it's nice
yeah.
to remind yourself that like your body and your brain are physical, and your health is important, and to give as much as you can, and then also be mindful of like, well, I can't destroy myself. This is a long game. There's like I
Hmm.
have to be engaged and present and um, practical and useful in the world forever. It's not just like a week of going super hard and then going like, well, we fixed
Right.
it.
Right.
So I think like
Good. Yeah.
finding ways to sustainably engage with the world and making it better is important.
Um, Let me ask you this. And there's actually a question here. We did talk about it before. It's from Matt, so thanks, Matt. Do you do stand up or just write? And you do both.
Mhm.
What's the what's the difference for you? Like, what's I guess the process getting ready for either one? Obviously, writing is probably a more solitary thing. Maybe not. Maybe you talked about having rooms with folks too. But is there a difference in mindset for you going between writing and doing stand up?
Yeah. The difference to me is that being stand up means doing stand up means I can do whatever I want. That's the biggest difference. It's that I'm not accountable to anyone else other than like doing the best I can,
Right.
and the people who booked me. And there's no sense of like, oh, this has to fit someone else's voice, or this has to fit this particular format. It can only be X, Y, or Z. It requires all these approvals, and we have to make sure the budget is there. With stand up, whatever I think is the best thing to do, I can do. And that's very fun and freeing. The other side of that is that it's so gratifying to be working on a show and work on something that's bigger than myself, to work on like, oh, I'm going to pitch stuff and write stuff and produce stuff for these hosts or a host with other, a different comedic voice. And so I have to be malleable and be um, and be adaptive and be mindful of those things. And I think like both are really, but the results are so much bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like when I'm doing stand up, I'm performing for whatever it is, as few as 25 people, as many as several hundred. But like when I'm writing something for TV, it's something that'll be seen by hundreds of thousands of people,
Right.
and which is it's a different kind of excitement.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if I'm assuming you follow the news a bit, yeah.
The what now?
The news. You follow the news a bit. Like you're not one
Never
of
heard
those
of it.
folks who are just like, I'm not dealing with that.
No, I'm pretty in it with the news.
If you, it doesn't matter what party, what people, whatever. But having done comedy, having kind of I mean, obviously you're communicating with folks. That's a big thing. What recommendations would you have for politicians who are out there now talking to members of the community or whoever the heck else they're communicating with? Just like maybe it's basic stuff, but what tips would you have for somebody who is communicating important information to that wider audience?
I would say what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's really helpful. And don't I don't know. I'm not like a political messaging expert. I like I mean part of me just wants to be like have smart good policy, and like don't equivocate. I think like
Yeah.
this is such a maybe a starry-eyed thing to say, but it's like we're in a really um, tense political moment. And by that, I don't mean that where there are two sides that are equal that are competing for something. Like that to me is like wishy-washy language. I think we're in a moment where like people are really protesting this violence by law enforcement against Black people, and it is important to like speak clearly and listen to people and hear what people want from you, and then not to like try to like equivocate. I think like take a moral stand. It's if ever there was a time, that time is now.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because despite you saying that you're not a political messenger, I'll call you a political messenger, not a political messenger.
Sure.
It really is right now. I mean, that's why I wanted to ask the question to see. But even talking, we had Chris Arnatti, who went around the country and he visited with folks. He actually came to Missouri, but he focused on communities that are often neglected and the folks aren't coming
Mm-hmm.
to visit. And he would talk to folks, a lot of whom do not vote, and just see like where they are and how they got to where they are and why they still live where
Mm-hmm.
they do or don't or whatever it might be. So it was an interesting conversation. We've had other folks who've come on and talk about different policies or whatever it might be. But what has continued to come up is that what folks really want from people who, are seeking these leadership positions or whatever else it is to just be real.
Yeah.
And
I think there's a real, and it's also be real is one thing, but then I think the other part of that is like be real good. Like don't stink. There's like if you stink, be fake. Just put on a personality, do what people bully you into doing. Absolutely. If you have good ideas, be real about them. But I think I feel that very sincerely. When people say be yourself, it's like who are you talking to? Not everybody. That's not everyone's thing. There are some people like ideally we can all be ourselves and that would be enough for the world, but some people need to be absolutely badgered into being someone better, and I think that is the job for the rest of us.
That's great. That's what society is here for.
Yeah, that's what society is here for.
Right. Yeah, we've developed this thing over time. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, you mentioned that you got a podcast.
I do.
What is your podcast? Give the pitch.
My podcast is called Make My Day. It is a one-on-one comedy game show where the contestant always wins because they're competing against no one. And so every week, the contestant wins a grand prize of a $100 donation to the charity or aid cause of their choice.
Wow. Is this on already?
It's on already. Our 8th episode, people watching now, our 8th episode is released tomorrow with Shea Serrano, who writes for The Ringer and is a best-selling author. He's wonderful. And if you are listening or watching this later, then 8 episodes are already out, at least.
Where can they find the podcast?
Anywhere you listen to podcasts, whether you're a Stitcher person or an Apple Podcast or Google Play, wherever you go, my podcast is there. Make My Day, Josh Gondelman, and it's short. It's like 22 to 28 minutes every episode. Yeah. There's no marathon here. We want in, we're out, we're having a good time.
That's great. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, we sometimes marathon. It kind of depends how deep we get. There was one initially, like we did, so when we start, and this turns into a podcast after. But initially when we started, we think, oh, okay, we're going to do like, a 20-minute thing, maybe a 30-minute if it's long, maybe we'll have to do. But then we had like these really great conversations, and we've capped it, right? So like an hour, we're done. Now I have had one, well, actually we had 2 guests on at the time. We were talking about voting rights in Missouri, and we're changing our voting laws quite a bit right now with everything that's going on. Yeah, and so that conversation went, and I was like, I'm not stopping this train. We've got a lot to talk about. So
that's important. I'm bringing very little to the table.
Yeah, yeah. It's good. So I guess for you, is there a lot of when you're done with the podcast and recording, like, is there a lot of editing that you do after, or how I guess what's that process after for you?
Yeah, I listen back. I make notes. I sometimes have to do pickups because it's there's a little recording after if I mess something up or if I want to massage it in a way that like didn't come out quite in the recording. So it takes another couple hours. Our recordings are like 40 to 45 minutes for a yield of like 27-ish, let's say. Um, and yeah, and it takes a bunch of editing because I want to be um, kind of ruthless. I don't want to be self-indulgent
Hmm.
because there's nobody that likes my stupid jokes more than me, and I have to like look myself in the eyes and be like, no, stop it.
Oh, that's great. Wait, so for the editing, I guess you're super involved in the editing process then.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have my editor, my engineer Houston is really great, and he has someone else named Kat who works on the like technical side of the edit, but like I make the round of notes that
Yeah.
like a paper cut for it they call it, and then we go from there.
Huh, interesting. Well, I guess
Yeah,
with that, because we did have one more question come through, um,
please.
and I'm going to put this up there because it's interesting, just kind of talking about the process of all of this. Um, what's the process for creating comedy, a joke, a moment? How does it start? What's the origin? This is
That's a
interesting.
great
Yeah.
question. It comes from all different angles. I mean, for TV and for stand up and for all sorts of things, it's very different. Like from TV, it starts with like, well, there's a show tomorrow, so make enough comedy that it's a show, which is like really a thing, right? Like before, when I started stand up, I would say comedy comes from when like a funny thing happens and I write it down, and then as I started doing it more, I was like, no, comedy comes from like when I have an idea I want to express and I flesh it out until it's a joke and then it's funny. And then once you're working in comedy, it's like, well, comedy happens because you're on deadline. And I think that all of that still factors in. Like something funny happens, or you have an idea that you think is funny to articulate. But yeah, but that to me is like the starting point. Having an idea that you're like, oh, this is interesting. Like this kind of bumps me in a funny way. Like we did a sketch on the show that I wrote, which is very fun, called Intern Fights. And the premise was this is from a real idea that our staff was bigger than my bosses had ever worked with before. And the host of the show said, just kind of in passing, like, what do we do with all these interns? And so that was the kernel of this idea. And I was like, the funniest thing to do as a bit, not for real, is to make a DVD compilation of them fighting and then sell it on an infomercial. And so we made that
Not
as
for
a sketch.
real, everybody.
Not
Not
for
for
real.
real.
We would never make our interns fight.
No.
We love our interns and cherish them. So that's kind of like the A to B to C of
Uh,
like here's the idea that I think is interesting and want to explore. Here's the funny take on it. And then I got it approved. I pitched it to the hosts and they were like, that's funny, let's do it. And then I wrote a draft and we had to like and so now for TV, it's not just like I had this funny idea, I say it into a microphone, people laugh or they don't. For TV, it's like, okay, now we have to book a stunt choreographer and 5 stunt actors and a camera crew, and it's an edit that takes a long time. And so I'm sitting with an editor and like who is amazing, Casey Brooks did an incredible job, and I produced two producers over time, Justin Tyler and Zach Golden, and it was and so all these different people that it takes to make this idea go from like, oh, that's funny, or that'd be funny, to oh, this is a comedy sketch for
right.
television.
Right. Right. Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's just kind of funny how I mean a lot of ideas just get sparked by, folks hanging out, which is why I think it's really interesting to see like how people are adapting to this more socially, physically distanced world and what that means. But I mean, the technology is there for so much of this interaction to continue, which is
For
great.
sure.
Yeah. Well, we are coming to the end, but we have a game that we play here too,
Great.
and it switches up. Kind of depends on the week and what we're doing. But we had one. Do you ever watch David Letterman when
Sure.
he had this skit called "Will It Float"?
Yes.
I loved "Will It Float." I don't know why. It was one
That's
of
great.
my favorite things. And I was so excited whenever it would come on. Like there were days where I'm like, I'm pretty sure it comes on every Thursday. And when it wouldn't happen I would just be so disappointed. So
Hmm.
I can't disappoint myself right now. So we're going to do Will It Float? Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay,
Hmm.
great. I'm going to put a big thing of water right here. We've done this one time before, and folks are able to guess as they're watching what they think is going to happen. You'll be able to guess too, of course, since you are the honored guest. I have here a bowl of water and a car key. A car key. Move it a little bit closer in case anybody wants to see. There's a hole right there for, where you can attach it to a keychain if you want. Car key. And the question is, will this thing float or will it sink? You can go ahead and put it in the
I say
comments
sink.
if you have a guess. You think sink?
I
You
say
think it's
sink.
going down, huh? Think it's going down. Somebody says, don't ruin the desk. Okay, you need to calm down. I just love this because this person is, you need to calm down. A lot, don't ruin the desk. That's pretty great. I'm not going to ruin the desk. I'm taking very good care. Okay, you don't think it's going to float. You don't think it's going to float. Obviously, it's not going to float. There was a moment, and I don't know where the pen went, but that kitten keeps stealing my darn pen. I don't know. I threw the pen in, and it actually half floated and half sank. So we think that this is going to sink. Duh. All right, let's find out. Straight to the bottom, it sank. Well done. Well done. You have won. You actually are the first one to win on Will It Float. Congratulations.
Thank you. It feels terrific.
Good. I'm very, very honored. Very honored. So thank you so much for coming. Pitch everything. Pitch the book. Pitch the podcast.
Sure.
Pitch the show. Pitch it all. I'm going to give you the camera right now.
Well, thank you. I'm Josh Gondelman. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, Gondelman. That's my last name. The podcast is Make My Day. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. Desus and Mero on Showtime. I have comedy albums if you're interested in hearing some stand-up that I've done in the past. And the book. Nice Try, Stories of Best Intentions and Mixed Results. You can get that delivered to you. You can pick it up at a bookstore. You can do audiobook or ebook if that's your speed, so you don't have to go anywhere. It's all out there for you.
That's great. Good. You almost forgot the book. The book is, for those of you who are watching on our social media pages, the book is in the link. It goes to your website. You've got Josh Gondelman. You've got that website.com. Yeah, which is great. Congratulations. You did it.
Thank you.
Some people don't. So if you're a kid out there watching right now, make sure to go reserve your
Nobody else does.
Nobody. There are no other ones anyway. We already figured that one out. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you doing this all the way from Brooklyn through the internet. It's pretty fun.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Everybody, as you're watching, Josh Gondelman, give him a hand in the comments. Please do. I'll put some links in there for all of his the podcast and everything else that he's doing. And very excited to have him on. Tomorrow, tomorrow's Tuesday. Goodness gracious. We will have Sergeant Heather Taylor, who's the president of the Ethical Society of Police. So we'll put that up in just a little bit. She has been a very big proponent of accountability in policing in not only St. Louis, but really all across the country. Wonderful organization that's doing work there. So we'll have her on to discuss. And then tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock. So Heather will be on at 3. Tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock, we will be doing a town hall with Cindy Slimp, who is running for state representative in the Springfield area. So make sure to check that out. Share all this stuff. Share the page. Share everything else. And you always can find me at EladGross.org. Thanks for coming, everybody. Hope you enjoyed.